Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of All Blaze No Glory, the podcast. It's been a while since I've had a guest, but I'm joined today by Alex Carmichael of the Oxford University fame, but also a Korfball player. How are you doing, Alex?
I'm all right, Rambo. Thanks very much for having me on. It's a pleasure to get to chat to you again.
Now, Alex and I know each other through the world of ice hockey. Alex is an ice hockey goalie, playing for the Oxford University Vikings. I'm not sure, and about to transfer to Cambridge. Alex, first of all, what's it like being a goalie in Oxford? And secondly, is what does it feel like crossing that Oxford Cambridge divide?
I'll answer question one, then we'll get on to question two. I think at Oxford we're very lucky. We have the world's greatest collection of goalies in university sport. Most other teams or clubs have, one or two to pick from. I think we started the year with eight, so we basically had two per squad.
Mhm.
But there's a good little community vibe going on, good rotation through all the sessions and making sure people get to play up, play down, support everyone else. On the Cambridge question, this is lies and fabrications on behalf of the BUIHA Nationals Committee. I'm not actually going to Cambridge University. I'm just going home to Cambridge, the city.
Oh dear. Oh well, that grew arms and legs because I genuinely believed you were going to Cambridge. Um,
As did most of my family, which was worrying enough.
I'm not here to talk to you about ice hockey today. Got you on because you play a sport called Korfball. So to start off with, can you explain what Korfball is?
Yeah, so korfball is a Dutch sport. It's a ball and basket sport, so similar to basketball and netball. It's a mixed sex sport, so you have teams of, or rather, the playing squad is two boys and two girls at each end of the court. The courts are pretty standard indoor court length. It's 20 meters wide by 40 meters long, so two halves of 20 by 10. And there's a long pole in the middle with the the korf on it. The korf is just the Dutch word for the basket. So it's like a netball post that stands freely. It's inset some 7, 8 meters in from the back of the court, so you can go around the back of the post, unlike in netball or basketball. And the aim of the game is to put the ball in the bucket. So two halves, each team is simultaneously attacking and defending. You have two boys and two girls per each half, which means you can't just kind of stack your lineup with really good shooters because you also have to be able to stop the other team from scoring. And boys can only mark boys, girls can only mark girls. And there's a couple of movement rules. So you can't dribble with the ball, much like netball. But there's a little bit of crossover from basketball where if you're dribbling the basketball and you pick it up, you obviously have 2 steps free to take a layup type shot. Same applies in korfball, so you can take what's called a running in shot. But obviously no dribbling or moving after you've stopped with the ball.
Okay. Now let's break that down just a little bit. So is there two Korfs in the game then, and one at each end?
Yeah, that's correct. So you have your defending korf and then the korf you're shooting into.
Right, okay. Because I was wondering if there was just one in the middle or something. And then
No, no.
you said that the teams are simultaneously attacking and defending. I take it it's just one ball in play, and when you got to go quickly from attack to defense.
Exactly, yeah. So when you turn over the ball, you have to work it back out of your defensive zone and get it to your attacking players, and then they can start their attacking phase.
Okay, okay. So that and presumably you're relying a lot on your ability to move and find space if you're attacking, and essentially your ability to track people if you're if you're defending. Is that kind of accurate?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the quirk of the game, perhaps, or the bit that's interesting. So it's a non-contact sport in that no kind of body checks, tackling, holding, anything like that. That nothing like that's allowed. Unlike something like handball, where you can get pretty physical on players. Um, the kind of the key rule is the defended rule. So normally, if you take a game like basketball, you can kind of shoot whenever you like. It's just up to you to be a good judge if that's a good shot or not. In korfball, if your defender is positioned between you and the post, so as if you were in ice hockey, right, defending between the puck and the net, and they can reach their arm out and they're within touching distance of your shoulder, you're considered a defended player. And if you take a shot, the play will be whistled dead and it will be called a defended shot, and the other team will get the ball. So finding space is a really critical part of the game to make sure you're outside of that defended distance, but not so far away that you're outside of your shooting range. So lots of very dynamic movement, changes of direction, and kind of you can set up some quite tactical plays with two boys or a boy and a girl working together to kind of create some moving screens, if you like. Obviously, you can't actually set like a basketball screen on someone, but you can kind of confuse the defenders by crossing over a lot and making different kind of cutting movements.
Cool. So, yeah, it sounds like it's quite a complicated game, but a game where you're relying on speed and your ability to work as a team and that sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
How and when did you get into korfball?
So I first started playing as a junior. To my knowledge, Cambridge and London are the big kind of hubs of junior korfball. There's some really excellent programs there. Liv Jones and Chris West in Cambridge doing a huge amount of the youth stuff, and then the Buckland family in London. And I'm sure there's many more that I'm less familiar with, but setting up lots of youth programs. So I had a friend at school who said, "Oh, I play this thing at like a local kind of sports hall. Do you want to come along one time and try it?" Because I'd been playing basketball with my school for a bit, and I thought, yeah, why not? And I kind of got hooked from there and played in both the kind of Cambridgeshire regional junior team and for the Cambridge City Korfball Club. So the way juniors and seniors work in korfball is a little bit different to other sports, because the senior competitions you can have juniors playing. So often you have lots of very good junior players who are maybe working towards the England squad or competing at kind of, regional national level, alongside people who have taken it up as adults or, ex-juniors who are now moving on to the senior levels of competition.
Cool. And what's the you mentioned there the England program and stuff. Is it quite a big international scene in korfball?
So I'd say surprisingly big. As someone who hasn't spent that much time looking into it, there is a fair amount of international competition. The Netherlands and Belgium tend to dominate. Obviously, the Netherlands, home country of the sport, and Belgium pretty close by. Chinese Taipei. So I think that's Taiwan competes as Chinese Taipei, although I maybe need to double check that. But yeah, so they often put in very strong showings. The Czech Republic as well often has some pretty strong juniors. So a lot of kind of maybe nations you wouldn't necessarily expect, but there is a pretty big international scene, all run under the International Korfball Federation. And so the England program, I believe the juniors were recently abroad and they came home in third place for one of the kind of junior international tournaments, which was a very good showing from them. But yeah, that's been going for some time, the England junior program, at least, as long as I've been playing, probably longer. So several players that, in much the same way that we have in ice hockey, lots of players who then go onto the GB student squads, filter back down to their uni teams or club teams, and, help make a positive impact in those spheres outside of just competing at international level.
Okay. And what's the university korfball scene like? Did you play for Oxford when you were there?
Yeah, so I played during my first year, then obviously second year was COVID, third year I was away on my year abroad, and then this year has been kind of my final grand return. That obviously features the annual varsity against Cambridge, and then there's most of the uni teams play in local association leagues as well as competing in bucks. So I think there's 3 tiers or maybe 2 tiers of bucks competition. There's kind of the championship plate and there's maybe trophy as well. But a lot of those junior players that kind of spent a lot of time playing together in their youth or against each other in their youth all kind of make their way back to the uni club. So there was some great photos at the bucks championships where there were about 30 or 40 players that had all originally started playing at a Cambridge club that we got a massive group photo of. Lots that have started playing in London together and then know each other either through continued club play or the England squad. But very healthy, very strong uni scene. The British Student Korfball team, or British Student Korfball Association, now has a team set up. They ran a tour last year to Hungary and they're planning one this summer to Turkey. And I'm hoping to get selected for that. So fingers crossed, we'll see how we go. But yeah, they've been running some extra kind of training sessions with Corinne Buckland and Marcus. Both Corinne used to be the head of the England Korfball Junior program, and Marcus just came off the back of winning the Premier League division title yesterday, as it happens, breaking a 13-year winning streak from the Trojans Korfball Club. So both very high standard players and coaches.
Cool. And I forgot what I was going to ask you next. We did have a plan of attack here. Do you have sort of positions, and are you playing? What position do you normally play in? Is what I was going to ask.
Yeah, so it's a bit looser in terms of traditional positions. So there's not really that many positions you can take on the court. The biggest and most obvious one is kind of a rebounding position, which tends to fall to the taller guys. So I've spent a lot of my career sat under the post and trying to predict the rebounds and collect them and then feed them back out to my team. There's one other kind of set position, but is normally rotated through different players, which is called the feed position. So normally you'd be holding the ball facing towards the net, looking to attack. The feed position is kind of an inversion of that. You hold the ball, you face outwards towards your waiting teammates and try and set them up for either a long shot or a running in shot. So usually there's within a division of 4 players, it's pretty clear who has the responsibility of going to the post, and there may be a couple of people who rotate through the feed position depending on how the play evolves. But the idea is generally you don't want to have people too set in their roles, because if then, for example, you have a very strong man-to-man defense that sets up against you and your main shooter gets shut down, you're kind of out of luck. So you need everyone to be pretty flexible and able to do just about everything.
Cool. And you obviously mentioned that there's a set gender roles is the wrong word, but there's set. You have to have 2 males and 2 females at each end of the court. Are there sort of games where that's more relaxed, or is that just a kind of game over? That must always be the rules.
So that's pretty much it, especially in competitive play, always the rule. The only time I've ever seen it relaxed, or if you like altered, which is when a team doesn't have 8 players. So obviously you have a starting 8 and then you can bring as many subs as you like. You typically get, I think it's 8 substitutions per match. So you get a lot of rolling subs if you want them. But the only time I've seen it kind of hand waved is if you don't bring 8 players, if you only have 7 players. And there are 2 differing rules that you can play under if you're playing essentially on a penalty kill the whole game. You either the team with more players has to have a non-shooting player. So you play 3-on-3 with one person rebounding all the time, which obviously gives you a lot more possession. It makes the defense job a lot harder. Or in some rule sets, the free player can be a shooting player, which means one defender is essentially having to play 1 versus 2, which is, just running themselves haggard pretty quickly.
Right. Okay. So it sounds like it's quite strict on that front. And what's been your most memorable moment playing korfball?
Oh God, that's a really good question. I've had a couple of strong ones. So through the junior stuff, Kent were always the team to beat. They had very strong players, lots of the London catchment area, and lots of the England junior squad. We beat them 1 year as the Cambridge regional team, I think in under 15s or something, which was a great year because we got both the inter-area competition and the National Youth Day gold medals, and I think we took silver basically every other year. And then recently in Uni Corf, just the varsity wins. I've played 2, won 2. And this year I think we beat Cambridge something like 21-7. 21-10. And there were 2 players on Oxford who individually kind of scored almost as many goals as Cambridge did as a team, which was just great performance.
You always like to stick it to your rivals, right?
Well, got to give as good as you get. And
across the board, how sort of competitive is it when you're playing? Is it quite friendly, or can it get quite feisty?
Very much depends on the clubs. There are teams and clubs with a bit of a reputation for being a little bit more chippy and kind of maybe arguing the calls a bit longer than they need to, or just getting a bit more physical sometimes. There are some teams that play it pretty clean. On the whole, I think it's a pretty good-natured sport. There's no real kind of bust-ups. Maybe, there's individual grudges if so-and-so fouled me one time and, I had a bruise for a week or whatever. You tend to remember those moments because they're quite rare. But generally speaking, it's pretty good natured. And obviously at the higher levels of like, the Premier Division of club competition, it may get a little bit more feisty. Some of the stuff in the grand finals yesterday, obviously a lot on the line, a lot to play for. But I think that's, pretty standard for any level of competition that's going that high.
Cool, cool. And if you were to try and sell Korfball to someone, what would you what would you tell them? How would you sell it?
Um, it's a great social sport. I think, obviously it being mixed gender, you don't get a lot of the kind of pettiness that sometimes crops up in single sex sports. Lots of very varied backgrounds that people come from, and great. It's just a very fun sport. I think a lot of the year I spent, ice hockey is a very different environment, but I kind of always knew I could come to Korfball and chill out and see some friends, have a good time, put the ball in the bucket, and go away feeling pretty good about myself. And I think it's just a very good feel-good sport.
Very good. Very good. And for those of you, I know that predominantly we talk about Scottish sport on here. There is a Scottish Korfball Association.
There's a Scottish national team. And fun fact, the Oxford squad came back very early this morning from a tournament put on by St Andrews and Dundee. Collectively, there were 2 days of beach Korfball and outside Astro Korfball.
Well, there you go. So I think if you Google Scotland Korfball, you'll find all the various clubs. There's 1 in Dundee, 3 in Edinburgh, including the university team, 1 in Glasgow, 1 in, I suppose it's 2 in Glasgow because there's Strathclyde University team as well, and St Andrews and Dundee. So there you go. So you can find a club there, you can find a league, find out about going to watch it, I suppose. Do people come along and watch very often?
Yeah, it's often more kind of friends and family than it is big crowds, but a lot of the bigger events, the kind of the youth days, the inter areas have lots more people going, coaches from different clubs, and then the grand finals, the England Korfball Association stuff normally draws a bigger crowd of both home fans of wherever it's hosted and, traveling away fans.
Cool. So what's your future like in Korfball? You mentioned you want to get into one of the international uni team. Have you got any other plans to try and make it all the way to the big international team or any of that?
No, I think not for me. I did try at one point in my junior career, but some very, very strong players out there in my age bracket, and I'm quite happy letting them take on the international foes. So I think it's probably back to club Korfball for me at some stage, just figuring out where I'm going to be after uni and then going from there. Great
stuff. Well, I wish you all the best and I hope you continue to enjoy that as well as ice hockey. Of course, we're not suggesting we want ice hockey over in the time. And it's been nice to talk about it because it was a sport that I actually incidentally tried to get a hold of someone from the Edinburgh Korfball team, but I didn't quite manage. So it was fortuitous that we were talking about it during our duties at BIHA Nationals. So thanks so much for giving up your time to come and have a wee chinwag about this.
No, my pleasure. Thanks very much for having me on.
Cheers.